Hi students, after our trip this morning to Crabtree Nature Center where we were taking a look at wildlife diversity, the next step is to actually compare diversity in all of the different habitats that we went through. So again, we looked at the wetland, forest, prairie, and lake and pond. So I'm going to show you first how to calculate or how to number these runs, and then once we have the runs numbered, we can go ahead and move on to the next page, which is actually doing this wildlife ratings index, and it's fairly straightforward and easy to do. So anytime we encountered a new species as we were going through our observations, we consider that a new run of wildlife. So that it's called a run of wildlife. It means how many of the same thing are we seeing at the same time, basically, if you want to think of it that way. So you always start with a number 1. Whatever it was is the first thing you saw becomes run number 1. On the next line, if you have a different species than the line before, you have to start a brand new run, and you number runs sequentially, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however, all right? So I started with the Canada goose. Now I'm moving to a mallard. That's a different species, so this is a new wildlife run, so I put number 2. Next, I go back to the Canada goose. Again, that's a different species than the species I just saw, which was a mallard, so that's run number 3. And I keep going in that fashion. Okay, a great blue heron, that's a different species, that becomes number 4. A heron is a different species, that becomes number 5. Next is the Canada goose again, that becomes run number 6. But then I see that I have another Canada goose entry here. Okay, so rather than putting a new run down, I just continue the run that I had before, which is 6. So for wetland species, there were 6 different runs here. So then the next thing to do is to come down to our sequential wildlife ratings index. And very simply, it's the number of runs divided by the number of individuals. And here's an example that they gave here as well, but I also did one for you. So let's go ahead and do that calculation real quick. So we've got, let's see, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 22 individuals that we saw, and we have 6 runs. Okay, so then quite simply, we would take 6 divided by 22, which I'm going to use my calculator to help me with that. Okay, and that's 0.27. So I'm just going to write on a different line here, 6 divided by 22, and that equals 0.27. All right, so that becomes our sequential wildlife rating for the wetlands. That's step 1. So step 1 would then be to go ahead and take the index num values and put them all in here. So again, swamp marsh is the same thing as wetlands. So I would put 0.27 here. All right, and then you're going to go ahead and do that for all of the rest of the habitats as well. To fill out the rest of this table, you go back and it's asking you for the number of species. So not the number of runs this time, but the number of species I saw. So I have a Canada goose, that's 1. A mallard, that's 2. A great blue heron, 3. And a green heron, 4. So I only saw 4 different species. So coming back to the table, I put the number 4. Once again, the number of individuals that I saw was 22. And this qualitative term comes from this table right here. So you look at the ratings value, and then you look at how many species you have, and that will tell you the quality of the wildlife for the quality of the habitat for wildlife. So I've got 0.27, so I fall right here. I only had 4 species, so my qualitative term is very poor quality. Okay, so again, you would go ahead and fill that out for all of the different species that you have, excuse me, all of the different habitats that we visited while we were at Crabtree today. So you're going to go ahead and take a picture of this table here for me. I don't need your raw data, I just need your analysis data, and there will be a couple of questions that I will also have you answer just related to comparing species quality by habitat. That's it. Please make sure that you get all of this turned in by the end of the week, and send me an email if you have any questions.